Hello there, and welcome back to the Level 2 lessons for the Star Wars Unlimited Judge program. As always, I'm your host Jonah, and this course is going to cover the best practices for running a smooth top cut. The single elimination portion of any competitive event is a strange dichotomy. It's one of the most visible and impactful and important parts of the tournament, but in other ways it's also the easiest and most relaxed. For many players, their goal is simply to make the top cut. Once they've reached that threshold, they're just happy to be there playing the game. The stress of trying to make the cut can diminish a little bit, and it can lead to the top cut feeling more casual than the rest of the event. This lesson is going to focus on a cut to top 8, as that's the most cut to single elimination for Unlimited. Furthermore, there will be a few places in this lesson that diverge from official guidance. Official Championship Series, Planetary Qualifiers, Sector Qualifiers, Regional Qualifiers, and Galactics should adhere to official guidance, but other competitive tier events that aren't official have a bit more flexibility. We include that guidance here as it can create a different play experience, which may be what you or the tournament organizer are looking for. Now, before the top 8 can begin, we need to know who's participating in it. For larger events, particularly ones with an audio system to make it easy to be clearly heard over the crowd, I encourage you to announce your top 8 competitors before publicly posting standings. While most of the top 8 know that they've made the cut, it often comes down to tiebreakers, and there may be some uncertainty. Announcing which players made the cut can create a moment of hype and excitement for the players and their friends celebrating the achievement. When announcing players, start with first and work your way down to 8th. The players towards the top of the standings are locked, and so it's less exciting to know that they're in it, but it's still exciting because saying that somebody's undefeated over so many rounds can bring them a lot of pride in their accomplishment. Going from 1st to 8th builds excitement because potentially the same number of points are in 8th place and 9th place, and you can even add that in, just say, and by a tiebreaker of, or edging out 9th place by however many percentage points of opponent match win percentage. That can really build the tension and make that moment of excitement for the player who made it that much more impactful, and can encourage the players who don't make it, who are just on the bubble, to come back and try harder the next time. Now, at the end of the announcement, ensure that standings become publicly available and have a short window, 2 to 5 minutes, usually 3, before standings are finalized. Very infrequently, there might be an error in someone's match record, which needs to be adjusted. However, you also need to move the tournament along, and so you can't wait indefinitely for somebody to point something out. Having a defined period before standings are locked in allows players the opportunity to raise concerns, but doesn't meaningfully delay the event. With your top 8 announced, it's time to prepare them for their matches. Part of that is accounting for what the tournament organizer needs for their media. This is particularly relevant for events with broadcasters. In many situations, there's no additional steps and you can move the players directly to play, but there can often be a few minor requests from the organizer or media team. The most common of these is photos, usually at least one group photo of the competitors and sometimes individual portraits. Beyond that, some organizers have players fill out a short biography or interview questionnaire to provide to the coverage team to allow commentators to provide a bit more insight into the player profiles, but this is generally reserved for exceptional events. Now, before top 8 play begins, it can be useful, but is absolutely not required, to perform courtesy deck checks. Penalties for errors with the deck or with marked cards should not be issued during these courtesy checks other than for cheating, as there is not an active match going on. The goal of these checks is to ensure that the top 8 is as smooth and fair as possible. Catching an issue during a top 8 match and issuing a game loss has a huge impact due to the single elimination structure, and so to improve player experience, we perform these checks. A player with a decklist error, however, is still issued a game loss for the same reasons that a decklist error is a game loss even between Swiss rounds. Once the checks have been performed, you can either retain the decks and only return them to players for their match and collect them between matches, or simply return them to the players. I encourage the latter as it leans on trust and respect within the community, and given that a deck check has just been performed and judges will be watching every match, the risk for adding cards to the deck or marking cards is much higher than usual. While that's being taken care of, you want to ensure that the play area is set up to maximize player comfort. Allow players to spread out a little bit more than usual, but ensure that they're not too spread out so that you and the judge team can observe them. If you have a feature match area, try to have all your players in or near that area, so you aren't traveling great distances between matches. A good practice is to have a spare set of chairs between each top 8 match. This not only allows the players a bit more elbow room on each side, but it gives judges a place to sit so that they can focus on a match and not have to stand for the duration. You also want to take into account spectators. Other players who are in the event, particularly the friends of the remaining competitors, want to watch the games as they play out. If you don't enforce boundaries, spectators will potentially crowd the players and passively distract them. Creating a barrier with tables, chairs, or simply instructing spectators to not pass a certain point can relieve this stress. Furthermore, if you're able to set up a rebroadcast of the stream, if you have one far enough away that the players can't hear it, that can pull spectators away because the top-down view is often more informative. Also, keep an ear open for spectator conversations. Sometimes idle conversation may drift toward discussing strategy or options, which can be detrimental to the event. And just remind players that they shouldn't be discussing ongoing matches in that level of detail. Now, with everything set up, it's time to play some Star Wars Unlimited. While your scorekeeping software will appropriately pair players throughout the bracket if you enter results, I encourage you to print or write out a bracket. This allows you to better communicate to players what their next matchup will be. In a constructed event, the winner of Seed 1 and 8 will play against the winner of Seeds 4 and 5, while the winner of 2 and 7 will play the winner of 3 and 6, and then the winner of those semifinals will play each other in the finals. If you run a draft top 8, players should be seeded randomly and then paired as they would be for the draft, with Seat 1 playing Seat 5, so on. If the pairings were based on seed to maintain the expected draft structure, players would also know what seat that they would be in and who their neighbors would be well before the draft starts, and consequently would have more opportunity to discuss specific strategies and signals for the draft itself. By randomizing the seats, the window of opportunity is reduced dramatically. Now, throughout the single elimination rounds, the player with the higher seed gets the choice of who starts with the initiative for game 1 of each match, but for games 2 and 3, the loser of the previous game chooses as they normally would. Official top cuts also have a time limit of 75 minutes. After players finish the current round and their additional action phase, the game proceeds to sudden death. Because of the single elimination rules, a winner must be found. If players are still in a game, the player with the most remaining HP on their base wins. If the remaining HP is tied, the player with the initiative when the game ends is the winner. If the players are going to game 3 and are in between games, the player who would start with the initiative wins. For unofficial events, you can consider running your top cuts without a time limit. If you do so, ensure that you consult with the tournament organizer to see if there are any limitations on the time you can spend in the venue, as some venues may close and you may need some time limits. When you have time limits, ensure that you're appropriately issuing time extensions when you take calls and interact with matches. Because the outcome of the match can change based on the state of the game in a single round, a minute can be very impactful. Throughout the top cut, it's very likely you'll have slightly more relaxed players. At the very least, you're going to have a more intimate event. During Swiss rounds, whether you're the only judge for a 30-player event or one of several judges for an event of over 100 players, you're not going to be able to dedicate your full attention to a single game or match, and neither will anyone else other than the players in those matches. However, during the top 8, it's very likely that you can have a judge watching each match, and that each match will have its own set of spectators. Banter and crosstalk is a lot more noticeable when you're sitting there, but by being in the space, you're also more able to effectively judge what is and isn't appropriate, and what might be making players uncomfortable. However, generally speaking, this sort of banter is entirely fine, and in fact should be encouraged. People should be having fun playing the game. As players finish their matches, one side of the bracket may finish before the other. In that circumstance, you can choose to have a semifinal play while a quarterfinal match on the other side of the bracket is ongoing. If you choose to do so, make sure it doesn't disrupt any plans for coverage or feature matches, and be aware that you may be creating a long stretch of time for one player to do nothing but wait while they wait for the quarterfinal to finish, then for that player to play in a semifinal while they've been waiting since the end of their semifinal half an hour or an hour ago. Now, as players are eliminated from the event, you can prize them out. When prizing is based on standing, they're usually based on rank ranges, such as 5th to 8th. That means that as soon as top 8 players eliminated, they know exactly what prizes they'll receive. You can even prepare each match by putting down prizes at the beginning of the match, letting players know which prizes go to the winner and which to the loser. I prefer to get prizes to players as soon as possible. Top 8 promos distributed as soon as the quarterfinals begin, top 4 promos as soon as player begins their semifinal, etc. This is to help minimize the overload that can occur if you try to do everything at once. Giving a player 4 different promos, a playmat, initiative tokens, some booster boxes, and then the next player 3 promos, a playmat, initiative token, and a different number of booster boxes can start to be a complicated process and slow things down. Instead, giving everyone the same promo, and then a half hour or an hour later giving the remaining competitors another promo, can be more individual steps and a little bit more work for you, but it's a little bit more composed and a little bit less scattered. When you get to your final competitor, be sure to congratulate them, make sure you have the information you need for any further communication, although they likely have given an email as part of event registration, and consider announcing the winner to the entire venue like you did the top 8. For local events like planetary qualifiers, there's a high probability that everyone interested in the outcome of the tournament is watching the match, so it's less impactful there, but at larger events, it can be a nice way to celebrate your championship. Speaking of larger events, that's the subject for our next lesson. We'll be talking about the structure of multi-100 player events, what different teams and tasks you can expect, and some guidance on how escalation should be handled. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want more Level 2 lessons in your feed, go ahead and subscribe. Join us Tuesdays and Fridays on twitch.tv/SW_judges for live broadcasts covering the content of these lessons as they're released, and join the Star Wars Unlimited Judge Program Discord to join the community discussion of this and much, much more. As always, good luck and have fun.